Good morning and welcome. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Vox, and I'd like to welcome you to our Sunday morning service from the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. In a moment, my wife, Becky, who is a practitioner emeritus, will open us up with a prayer and a reading. But I want to do something first that's totally on me, okay? I want to begin with something that we always begin our service with, and we haven't been doing it lately, but I want to begin again. And it's simply a statement that if you've never been to a Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. I just want to open with something. Last night, the President of the United States held a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in the course of the rally, he mocked the coronavirus, which has killed almost 120,000 people in our country. And he went on a bit of a racist rant, referring to it as, once again, the Chinese virus. And twice he called it the Kung flu, which is a totally racist comment and a totally racist thing for the President of the United States to do. You know, I said this before, there's been great violence perpetrated against Asian Americans because he's done this before, and now he's done it again, which also puts Asian Americans at risk. So much so that I know I've talked to Becky about it several times, that we don't go out much, but when we do, I have to be with her to hopefully assure that she won't be assaulted. And I just want to say that I think as a people, we're better than that, even if our president isn't. And I would just say to anybody who's thinking about who to vote for in November, that if you vote for a racist, what does that make you? And with that, I'll let Becky pray us in.
So let's just take a moment right now to turn within to that loving space, to that wonderful divine presence and power that is all love, that is surrounding each and every one of us, that is in the form and the formless, the seen and unseen. And I'm knowing that this divine presence is within me as it is within each and every person on this Zoom call and beyond. That each one of us is the very presence of divine spirit. So right now, I'm knowing that as we are expressing this higher truth of who and what we are, we're expressing this infinite love that is the energy that transcends hatred and fear. That right here, right now, that this unlimited love is dissipating all that is not of this truth. And we are, each one of us is the living expression of this truth. That right here, right now, that we express it through our actions, through our words, through our feelings. We each know the higher truth of who and what we are. And I'm knowing that this unlimited love is expressing through this morning's message. That Reverend Dr. Ron is being guided and directed by this wonderful energy that fills his mind and his feelings and his words with its truth. That he too is the very expression of this unlimited love and power. And so knowing this, I'm knowing that this morning is filled with love, with connection, with our hearts filling up with understanding, with joy, with peace, with abundance, and so much more. And so knowing this, I just release this. I release this. And just know that it is done. And so it is.
So it is.
This morning's reading is written by Alan Cohen from his book, Wisdom of the Heart. Spiritual growth doesn't require us to add to ourselves. It invites us to let go of everything that encumbers us. The world has taught us that success is a matter of acquiring and having. Yet, we find that the more stuff we collect, the less we know ourselves, and the further we drift from peace. Owning things is fun until they start to own us. We need to rethink what we have and why. For instance, our sophisticated technology gives us devices to save time, but then we fill up our newfound free time with more stuff to do. So we end up becoming busier and more stressed, not more relaxed. We say yes to countless requests, fully intending to carry them out, only to discover that most projects require more time and energy than we anticipated. Then we feel overwhelmed with everything that's on our plate, so we grow irritable and wonder how we got so burnt out. At some point, we recognize that less is more. When we quit trying to prove or protect ourselves with possessions, with accolades, and with degrees, we begin to see the beauty and worth in ourselves, just as we are. Then we find immense joy in lightening up, for the lighter we get, the higher we can soar. We gain freedom in releasing possessions, activities, and relationships that stifle our happiness. And we begin to appreciate the simple things in life. The white space on a page is as important as the ink. The silence between the words is as compelling as the words themselves. Rest is as important as activity. As we recognize that simplicity is the flower that brings the intellect to its knees, we own the greatest riches of all.
Thank you, Becky. So I want to start. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And I got some really great presents, one of which I asked my daughter for a book by Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue, What Makes a Marriage Last. And I got it today. Look at the size of this book. I thought I was getting a nice thin little book that I'd read today. It's going to take longer than one day. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the message today. So sometime this week, somebody I'm friends with on Facebook posted a story. And it's a story I had seen before, but not in a number of years. And it made me think. And I thought that'd be a great message to share the story and give some of my thoughts on it. But then, since we're going to have a discussion after the message is over, I thought we could all share what we're thinking on a few questions I'll present. So let me begin. Let me read the story to you. A wise woman traveling in the mountains finds a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she meets another traveler who is hungry, and the wise woman opens her bag to share her food. The traveler sees the precious stone and asks her to give it to him. She did so without hesitation. The traveler left rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew the stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. But in a few days, he comes back to return the stone to the wise woman. I've been thinking, he said. I know how valuable the stone is, but I give it back in the hope that you can give me something even more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me the stone. I thought to myself, there's 3 or 4 questions we could discuss. And the one that I'm going to really base the message on is, what do you think was within her to give him the stone? Could you have given up that stone? If you were that traveler, would you have given it back? And lastly, what does the precious stone signify in today's culture? But like I said, I want to stick with the first question for right now. What was within her that enabled her to give up the stone so readily? You know, I think when I think about this, the traveler saw in that stone that it represented to him safety and security, and it represented to him the good life. But for the wise woman, she knew that safety and security come from within, that there's more to life than material things, that when we live from the inside out, we have all of the safety and all of the security that we'll ever need. So let me tell you a story. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I missed something. Let me give you a quote from Carl Jung, who said, "Who lives outside dreams, who lives inside awakens." You know, our security is our connection to spirit, not what we own. Think about this. Someday, everything we own is going to go away. It's going to be totally meaningless. When we make our life transition, all of our stuff goes away. But what doesn't go away is our connection to spirit. So, you know, I think most of you know I write a column 4 times a year for Science of Mind magazine. And one of the columns that I think I got the most personal reaction from people was titled "The Priceless Glove." And it was a story about me when I was a young boy, I liked to play baseball, softball particularly. And one year for my birthday, my parents got me a really, really nice glove. And I was out playing softball with my friends, and somehow I came upon a purse, a small purse, and inside was a laundry ticket and a $10 bill. And my friends all said, "Whoa, cool, we're all gonna get sodas later." And I said, "No, guys, I'm gonna return this." And I went to the laundry because I knew the laundry person, and I showed it to him, and he said, "Leave it with me, Ron. I know who it is, and I'll make sure she gets it back. And by the way, she's an older lady, and this very well could be her last $10 for the month because she doesn't have much." I went back to the field, and all my friends had dispersed, and my glove was gone. And I absolutely dreaded going home. Oh, first, to tell my dad. So I went to a bunch of my friends, and all of them said, "We don't know, the glove was there when we left." And I knew none of them would have taken it. So like I started to say, I dreaded going home. And I started to tell my dad the story, and here they had just gotten me this gorgeous glove, and I didn't even have it a week, and I lost it. And as I was telling my dad the story, I started sobbing. And when I looked up, he had tears in his eyes too, but not for the reason that I thought. He said to me how proud he was of me that I returned the glove. I mean, the purse. And he said, "You know, Ron, the stores have lots of gloves, but they don't have that many honest people in the world. I'm really proud of you." And so we went out to eat that night, and he let me pick the restaurant. And I picked my favorite Italian restaurant. I love Italian food. And my dad was friends with the owner. And he called the owner over at some point and said, "You know, we're celebrating." And he told him why. About 10 days later, I got a package in the mail. And when I opened it, it was a brand new glove that the owner had purchased for me. In fact, I still have it. I meant to bring it to show you, but I still have that glove. And there was a note in the box. And let me read what I wrote at the end of the article. There was a note in the box reminding me that a man's reputation is the most priceless gift he can have. The man also wrote that the new glove was a thank you for reminding him of that fact. I share that story because it teaches, at least it taught me, that there are so many more important things in life than things. There are more important things than things. You know, Michael Beckwith says that happiness is our true nature. And he writes a prayer. Let me just read the prayer to you. "My prayer today is for the courage to be what the Holy Spirit intends for me. I want to be better, an opening for God to make me stronger." And he goes on and he writes that so many of us look outside for what they've never lost. They let society, religion, celebrities, media, advertising, and TV define what happiness is and how we can experience it. But authentic happiness, it doesn't come from outer sources. It comes from the inner realization of who we are. When we want to make a permanent shift in our life, it has to come from inside. When we want our life to improve, we need to make better choices and live from consciousness. Thich Nhat Hanh puts it this way: at any moment, you have a choice. That choice either leads you closer to spirit or further away from it. Let me give you a couple of examples from my life. And I think it'll show you what I mean about making a choice that brings you closer to spirit or further away from it. When I had a church in Phoenix, outside Phoenix, I had a couple of experiences I'll share with you. One of them is one day I walked in and there was bills on the floor. They were all together, $200 in bills. And it was clear the way they were together that they fell out of somebody's pocket. So I announced it and nobody claimed it. I announced it for a couple of weeks and nobody claimed it. And after I announced it the second time, I had one of our congregants come to me who actually held office in another spiritual organization. And she said to me, you know, I don't know why you keep announcing that $200. I wouldn't do that. And I said, what would you do? And she said, I'd look at it as God threw me down a gift. I'd put it in my pocket and I'd shut up. Somehow, I don't think that's what brings us closer to spirit. One other example. We had a very big business, wedding business. And one Sunday morning after a wedding on Saturday night, when I pulled into the parking lot, there was a ring there. And I picked it up and I announced, asking people if anybody knew what it was, and nobody did. I called up the bride's mother and asked her to check with our guests. And she called me back and said, nobody claimed it. About a week later, when the bride got back from her honeymoon, I called her up and she didn't know anything. And she too checked and called me back and said no. Anyway, to make a long story short, we put ads in the newspaper and nobody claimed it. So Becky and I took it to a jeweler and we had it appraised. And the jeweler, to our shock and surprise, said, this is a really expensive ring. It's platinum and diamonds. It's worth $7,500. So, and he gave us some advice, and we put it in a safety deposit box in the bank. Now, Becky and I were in the midst of moving here, actually, and we had somebody painting the inside of our house who was also from our center and needed money. And he was talking to me one day as he was painting about the ring, and he said, boy, I don't know what you're doing. He said, why did you do what you did? And I said, and he knew, by the way, that our first stop, we were traveling by car to come here, was in New Mexico. And he said, you know what I would do if I were you? And I said, no, what? And he said, I'd get that ring, I'd put it in my pocket, and as soon as I hit New Mexico, I'd pawn it and keep the money. And so I share those because is that an action, or those actions that would bring us closer to spirit? I don't think so. I think we need to not focus on only the material, but focus on what brings us closer to God and what really gives us safety and security in our life. Joel Goldsmith said that as we go through life, when we want to go through joyously, fearlessly, successfully, and harmoniously, he said we must rely on the Father within. And it doesn't mean necessarily that our outside world will change. He said, you know, you don't have to give up your job. You don't have to give up your family. What it means is we will practice the presence of God. Practice the presence of God. Jack Kornfield wrote a book, After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. And what that title means is after we become enlightened, our outside world may not change, but how we look at it will. You know, we still have bills to pay. We still have family responsibilities, but we experience what happens in our outside life. We experience differently. We experience it from a spiritual point of view. We see God in all of it. You know, I'll just share every day I have a set of prayers that I do a couple of times a day. And one of the things I've been praying for lately is for our country, you know, and I pray just not exactly like this, but to paraphrase that we have all of this turmoil going on. And when we look at appearances, it looks pretty chaotic, doesn't it? But I also say, I don't understand it all, but I know right in the middle of it is spirit. And so on some level, it's all good because it's all God. And that because of that, everything must be unfolding in divine perfection. Let me read to you a piece that Joel Goldsmith writes. He said, we can all say this to ourselves. I am living and moving and having my being in the Word of God, keeping the Word of God alive in me, abiding in the Word and letting the Word abide in me. I know when I arise in the morning, or even before arising on first awakening in the morning, it becomes necessary to consciously remember this is God's day and God goes before me. To make the crooked places straight, God goes before me to bless. God will be with me every step of the way. Omnipresence guarantees that if I go up to heaven, I will find God. If I make my bed in hell, I will find God. If I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will find God. And there will be no time during this day when I will be outside the realm of God. I will keep my mind stayed on God. I will acquaint myself now with him and acknowledge him in all my ways. You know, Lama Surya Das is a Buddhist teacher, and he writes on Buddha and happiness. And he says, you know, Buddha says we get happiness from giving and sharing. We get happiness from acquiring wisdom. We get happiness from experiencing inner peace. Doesn't that sound a lot like the lady in our story, the wise woman in our story? And Surya Das goes on to speak about Viktor Frankl. And he said, Viktor Frankl wrote, what is the meaning of life isn't the right question to ask. It doesn't matter what we expect of life. What matters is what life expects of us. And we discover the meaning of life through living. We all must find our own meaning. And Surya Das says one way we can do that is to ask some questions like, what is most meaningful to me? What do I care about most? What is my life all about? One of the things that's obvious, I think, in the story is that the wise woman is at peace with herself, and she's at peace with the world around her. Ernest Holmes says, if we want peace outwardly, we must realize it inwardly. And he goes on to say, peace comes from a consciousness of trust in the goodness and mercy of the universe in which we live. And I read a blog this week about a lady named Margaret Paul, and she has an exercise in there to help us see the goodness and mercy in the universe. And she says, so just think about some things. So let me run them by you. Think about these. Think about the times you knew that you were being supported by the universe. Think of the times when something good came from something bad in your life. Think about the times you were at the right place in the right time, the times that you felt spirit with you, the times that you knew something without knowing how you knew. And lastly, the times that you were guided to help another. You know, Wayne Dyer says, we must offer peace to have it. So let your loving presence not be guided by your ego, but guard your words and your actions through love. And always choose to be kind when you have the choice. Obviously, the wise woman was generous. And I just want to share something with you from Khalil Gibran that I think is so meaningful. He said, generosity is not giving me that which I need more than you, but it is giving me that which you need more than me. Let me read that again. Generosity is not giving me that which I need more than you, but it is giving me that which you need more than me. When we give, it doesn't have to be material either. It can be giving of ourselves, being present to someone who needs you. I want to make one last point. Lastly, in order for the wise woman to give up that stone, she exhibited love, a love for life and a love for all the people she encountered. You know, Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will be your heart. And Wayne Muller wrote, we become what we love. So I ask, what are you becoming? And are you happy with it? And I want to close. I want to read you another column that I wrote in Science of Mind magazine. And by the way, the title of my column is all about prosperity. And this column is titled "You Make the Choice." I read a fable about a woman who comes out of her house and sees three old men with long white beards sitting in her yard. They look hungry, so she invites them in, but they inform her they cannot come in until her husband returns from work. When he returns, she invites them in again, and they say, we do not go in the house together. The woman asks why, and one of the men tells her, one of us is wealth, another is success, and the third is love. Go discuss with your husband which one of us you want to invite in. His first thought is, invite in wealth. The wife disagrees, and she wants to invite in success. Just so happens, their daughter-in-law, who was observing the conversation, interrupted and said, why not invite in love? Then our home will be filled with love. They decide to follow the daughter-in-law's advice and invite in love. As love starts walking towards the house, the other two get up and follow him. The lady of the house was surprised and asked, I only invited in love. Why are all of you coming? The old men replied together, if you had invited wealth or success, the other two of us would have stayed out. But since you invited love, wherever he goes, we go with him. Wherever there is love, there is also wealth and success. Ernest Holmes wrote, have enthusiasm. Above all, Have a consciousness of love, a radiant feeling through which your consciousness at all times feels love flowing through. When love is flowing through us, we have wealth beyond measure. And if we have that, how can we not be a success? Many years ago, while I was in corporate life, my position was going to be eliminated, and I was fearful we'd lose our beautiful home. One evening, Becky asked me to sit down and have a chat. This is what she said. Ron, I know you're upset about our finances, but when I moved to California, I lived in a studio apartment. If I have to do that again, I can. What matters is us. As long as we have one another, we can face any challenge. That was the day I learned about the difference between wealth, success, and love. God bless you. Thank you for being here, and have a great week.